Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto Uzumaki uncovered an ancient tomb and mastered Kurama, the shinobi god and his growing harem. Naruto x Konan x Hinata Hyuga x Sakura Haruno x Ino Yamanaka x Tenten x Tamari x Yugito ni x Samui x Mabui x Mei Terumi x Tsunade x Enko Mitarashi x Karen Uzumaki, Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The sun slowly set over Konohagakure no Sato, one of the 5 great shinobi villages. While most businesses were locking their doors for the night, one person was not so lucky. In the tall tower near the center of the village, the 5th Hokage, Tsunade Senju sat behind her desk, a large pile of paperwork next to her. She sighed and ran a hand through her long blonde hair knowing she had brought this on herself. Despite what many people thought, being Hokage didn't mean day after day of endless paperwork. Even with all the extra paperwork the Suna Oto invasion had created, on top of the paperwork generated by the hospital, she still found time to train her new apprentice Sakura Haruno and still have an hour or two to herself every day. The endless paperwork was just an easy excuse for when she didn't want to have to deal with somebody. However, over the last few days she had slacked off a bit, resulting in her current predicament. She sighed once again as she dated her signature. "Brat, you better hurry up and get back here," she muttered to herself. "I'm getting tired of waiting for you to take this job from me." The reason for her recent slacking was her preparing for the return of the number 1 hyperactive knucklehead ninja of Konoha. The one who had snapped her out of her decades-long depression following the deaths of her brother and lover in the Second Shinobi World War. The Jinchuriki of the 9-tailed demon fox, the last known member of the Uzumaki clan, and self-proclaimed 6th Hokage, Naruto Uzumaki. You know, when you put it that way, you'll probably scare the brat away. A voice behind her said. Tsunade looked over her shoulder and saw someone she wasn't expecting for a few more days. It was her teammate, the legendary Toad Sage Jiraiya. Noticing the glare she was giving him, his dopey grin got bigger. "Come on, Tsunade. I don't see you for 3 years and the first thing you do is glare at me." Jiraiya pouted. "I thought we had something special." Tsunade rolled her eyes but couldn't herself from smiling. "Welcome back," she said before going back to filling out paperwork. "You should have let me know you were coming back early. Sakura will be disappointed she didn't get to meet Naruto as soon as he got back." Jiraiya moved to sit on the couch, but before he could get comfortable, Tsunade asked the one question he had been hoping to put off. Speaking of which, where is Naruto? Trying to figure out how to word it so Tsunade wouldn't kill him, he decided to just rip the band-aid off. Putting on his best smile, he happily declared, "No idea. Honestly, I haven't seen him in over a year." Seeing Tsunade freeze up, he realized that his efforts to sound optimistic made him sound a little too enthusiastic about not knowing Naruto's whereabouts. Before he could start explaining, Tsunade snapped the pen she was writing with and slowly stood up. "Jiraiya," she said in the evilest tone he had ever heard. "You have exactly 3 seconds to start explaining why Naruto isn't with you, or I will unleash a hell that will make Orochimaru's experiments look merciful." She began slowly cracking her knuckles while Jiraiya began panicking. "Wait, he begged. The toads were watching over him the whole time. He was never in any danger. Look." Jiraiya quickly flew through the hand seals for the summoning technique. In a puff of smoke a small toad, with large eyebrows wearing a dark cape appeared. Before he even realized where he was, Jiraiya grabbed him and held him in front of Tsunade like a shield. "Go on, Fukasaku. Tell Tsunade what Naruto's been up to. Tell her he's fine. Go on." Fukasaku quickly separated himself from Jiraiya and jumped onto Tsunade's shoulder. Please refrain from using me as a shield in the future, he said as he dusted himself off. Especially since I told you it was a bad idea to wait this long to tell her. Fukasaku turned and hopped onto Tsunade's desk. That aside, he said as he began clearing some space, I have some papers that Naruto wanted me to pass on to you once he got back. I don't see any harm in giving them to you a few days early. And Naruto's fine. Satisfied that Tsunade's desk was cleared enough, he turned back to his summoner and the enraged medic still glaring at him. I shall return momentarily, he said with a bow before reverse summoning himself. See, Jiraiya said nervously, Naruto's fine. You can stop trying to kill me with your eyes now. Right, Tsunade. The furious Hokage continued glaring for a moment before she turned and walked back to her desk. Very well, she calmly started, you've proven that Naruto isn't in any danger. So I can't be mad at you for that. She sat down and pulled a bottle of sake out of one of the drawers. Now for my next question. Tsunade opened the bottle and swig, as Jiraiya nervously sat in the chair in front of her desk, knowing she probably didn't want him lounging on the couch right now. Tsunade took several deep breaths before looking at her teammate. Jiraiya, why the hell did you let Naruto go running off in the first place? Well, it was right after Naruto's 15th birthday, he began. Naruto had gone into the woods to train and didn't come back that night. It wouldn't have been the first time he spent all night training, so I didn't think much of it. But the next morning he was back at camp, just staring at the fire with this dead look in his eyes. I tried to get his attention, but he just ignored me. Right as I was getting worried, he suddenly got this really determined look in his eyes and asked if he could spend the last year of the trip training by himself. He said he would have the toads with him if things got too dangerous and he really needed to do this. After seeing that look in his eyes, I agreed but told him that if he wasn't learning anything, the toads would summon him back to me. I didn't hear anything from them, so I assumed everything was going well. Before Tsunade could begin lecturing him on how irresponsible it was to just hope the toads could summon Naruto away from danger, Fukasaku reappeared with a haphazard pile of scrolls and papers. Last time I get Gamakichi to keep track of paperwork, he muttered to himself. Sorry about the disorganization, but I think I can find the important ones. He began looking through the papers while Jiraiya and Tsunade wondered what exactly Naruto did to generate this much paperwork. Fukasaku picked up a scroll and gave it to Tsunade. This details the origins of chakra and the first chakra users, he said. Before Tsunade could ask any questions, Fukasaku held up a small folder with stack of papers inside. Here's a formal request from the leaders of Omegakure for a political alliance between the two villages. Both Jiraiya and Tsunade stared at Fukasaku with their jaws on the ground. Naruto had somehow convinced one of the most paranoid and isolated hidden villages to open up to outsiders. Sure, there were rumors that Hanzo had been overthrown, but since the borders remained closed, nobody had been able to verify them. Fukasaku, Tsunade began, how exactly did Naruto come in contact with the leaders of AIM? Walking into a hidden village was one thing. Meeting up with the top ninja was another. Fukasaku picked up a stack of papers stapled together and handed it to Tsunade. He heard a rumor that the leader of Akatsuki was in AIM and decided to investigate. Jiraiya and Tsunade's eyes popped out of their heads. The leader's girlfriend, I'm assuming, approached him and they hit it off. One thing led to another and him and those two are real good friends now. Speaking of which, Akatsuki has been disbanded and those are the profiles of all its former members. Jiraiya quickly grabbed the papers from Tsunade's hand while she was too stunned to stop him. While Jiraiya was comparing Naruto's notes with the information he had gathered over the last year, Fukasaku grabbed a folder that looked similar to the first, only bigger. Here's a request by the Mizukage for an alliance between Konoha and Kiri. Once again Tsunade's jaw hit the floor. You're telling me the brat who refers to the Hokage as Granny somehow managed to convince two of the most isolated hidden villages to open their borders to outsiders? Tsunade asked. Fukasaku just smiled at her. You of all people should know of his ability to positively influence people. Tsunade blushed while Jiraiya, who had finished looking over the files of the ex-Akatsuki members, laughed. Before Tsunade could come up with a response, Fukasaku handed her another paper. Naruto has requested that you make the records of Itachi Uchiha's final mission public. Jiraiya was confused as to why Naruto would ask for that, before he noticed Tsunade seemed very nervous. Before he could ask, Fukasaku handed him another stack of papers stapled together. There's the information on almost all the Jinchuriki. Who they are, where they are, their abilities. All that stuff. Jiraiya began flipping through the files and saw that they were all rather thorough. How exactly did he get this information? He asked. The Jinchuriki are some of the most well-guarded secrets in a hidden village. Also, why is there no info on the Sanbi host? Fukasaku looked up from flipping through papers. Well, for the most part, he just asked them. Most of the last year was spent meeting with all the other Jinchuriki. Of course, some leaders weren't very happy when they learned a Konoha ninja was befriending their weapons. But for the most part they all like him. Once again Jiraiya's jaw hit the floor. As for the Sanbi, the fourth Mizukage was killed and Naruto wants to keep the new Jinchuriki a secret for now. Fukasaku held up two more sheets of paper, once again cutting off the questions the two Sannin had. These are the last two important things. They're a pair of techniques that Naruto created. Or rather, he improved existing techniques in ways only he could. Tsunade and Jiraiya raised their eyebrows. The first is a healing technique that uses large amounts on yang chakra to generate organs from nothing. The other is a method of using yang chakra to complete the Edo Tensei. Jiraiya and Tsunade stared blankly for a few seconds before they exploded into a series of questions. Unable to understand a thing they were saying, Fukasaku took a deep breath. Shut up. The two ninjas stopped, if only because they were shocked such a small toad could be so loud. If you two have any questions, you can just ask Naruto yourselves. He should be back tomorrow with his new teammates. Now if you'll excuse me, Shima will be rather upset with me if I miss dinner. With that, Fukasaku reverse summoned himself back home. Jiraiya and Tsunade still had a million questions, but as they looked at each other, they had the same thought. New teammates. X equals. Meanwhile, in the forests outside Konoha, a trio of teens sat around a small campfire. The first one was a blonde boy with 3 whisker marks on each cheek, wearing a black and orange shirt and pants with a large red jacket. He was sitting in a meditative stance, carefully taking in everything in the environment around him. On his right was a very feminine black-haired boy, wearing a bright pink sleeveless kimono. He was very carefully cleaning an absolutely massive sword, with a blade almost as long as he was tall. Next to them, the only girl in their group tended to the fire while stealing glances at the black-haired boy. She had lopsided red hair and deep red eyes behind her glasses. All 3 of them were looking forward to reaching Konoha tomorrow. Hopefully they would be able to enjoy the peace for just a little before the coming war finally erupted. Jiraiya and Tsunade paced restlessly back and forth in front of the main gates of Konoha. Much like Fukasaku had said, most of what was left of the pile had been random junk, mostly receipts that Tsunade really didn't hope he expected her to pay back. A training trip was not a mission. Besides that, there were lots of pamphlets for random tourist destinations around the elemental nations, and what looked like lots of random journal entries, very few of which had anything interesting or important to say. It was slightly worrying that somebody who knew as much classified information as Naruto could still act so ditzy. Where the hell is he? She yelled, startling the gate guards who had been nodding off. Wanting to get answers out of Naruto as soon as possible, she had shown up to the gates at dawn. Several hours later, and there was no sign of Naruto or his mysterious new team. Now Tsunade, Jiraiya said, ignoring her agitated glare, he said he'd be back today. He never gave a time. Just be patient and you'll get your answers. And hopefully I can get some answers of my own, he thought. Last night when he asked Tsunade why Naruto was interested in Itachi's final mission, she had become very evasive and refused to answer him. He was shocked when he pressed her for answers and she threatened to have him locked up if he didn't back off. Something big was going on and he was determined to find out what. The sound of laughter pulled Jiraiya from his thoughts. Looking down the road, he saw 3 people approaching. Jiraiya pulled out his spyglass and was pleased to see that Naruto was finally back home. Aside from growing a few inches and adding a long red jacket to his outfit, he looked exactly the same as he did when they had parted ways a year ago. Now to get a look at these new teammates of his. Looking to Naruto's right, he saw the source of the laughter. It was a girl about Naruto's age with lopsided red hair and glasses. She was wearing a purple button-up shirt that was barely buttoned, showing a bit of cleavage in her toned stomach. Her long legs were also on display thanks to the shorts she was wearing. Not bad, kid, Jiraiya thought with a perverted grin. Now let's see the other one. Looking to Naruto's left, he was very pleased to see another girl about Naruto's age, who seemed to be the butt of whatever the redhead was laughing at, judging by the angry blush on her face. She had long black hair and was wearing a sleeveless pink kimono that showed off her strong arms, presumably gained from swinging the massive sword strapped to her back. All in all, she was rather cute, in an oddly boyish sort of way. Hey, pervy sage, Granny Tsunade, I'm back. The 2 Sannin groaned at hearing their old nicknames again. The 3 teens stopped in front of the village leader and stood at attention. Naruto Uzumaki reporting for duty. These are my friends, Haku, the brunette gave a polite wave, and Karen. The redhead adjusted her glass and nodded. So did you get my letters? Yes, I did, Tsunade replied as she grabbed him by the jacket. And there's the little matter of you running your mouth about classified missions that we need to talk about. My office, now. Before Naruto could respond, she dragged him down the street kicking and screaming. Well, Jiraiya said, I doubt that was the welcome he was expecting. He turned and looked at the 2 newcomers who were laughing at their friend's unpleasant situation. So, the teens stopped laughing and looked at the sage. Exactly how close are you ladies with Naruto? He asked as he pulled out his notepad. Haku's blush returned, as did Karen's laughter. Suddenly Karen pulled Haku into a tight hug. I hate to break it to you, she said, but the 2 of us are seeing each other exclusively. She punctuated his sentence by kissing Haku on the cheek. Jiraiya began giggling and writing before a depressing thought occurred to him. So you're telling me after all this time Naruto is still completely clueless when it comes to the ladies? He asked with a sigh. Haku and Karen looked at each other before they exploded into laughter. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. What's so funny? You'll have to ask Naruto since it's his story to tell, but let's just say you couldn't be more wrong. Haku said with a laugh. Come on, Karen. I'm sure Lady Tsunade will have some questions for us as well. With that, the 2 teens walked after Naruto and Tsunade while Jiraiya began thinking up ideas for his next book, involving 2 wandering lesbians and the brave ninja warrior who captured both their hearts. By the way, Jiraiya looked over his shoulder and saw Haku giving him a grin. It was a grin he had come to fear. I was the same grin Naruto always had right before a prank. You should know that I'm a boy. The teens then left Jiraiya standing there confused. Finally his brain pieced together what it just learned and neatly summarized his thoughts. What the hell? Equals x equals. Start talking, brat. Tsunade said as she paced in her office. How do you know about Itachi's last mission and why do you want to go announcing it to the whole world? Despite giving Naruto her best glare, she could tell he had grown as a ninja by the glare he was giving back. Maybe because he's a hero and right now the entire world is treating him like a monster for sacrificing everything in his life to keep his home safe even though there's absolutely nothing left to tie him to it. That sound like a good enough reason for you. Naruto snapped, clearly not pleased with having to try to justify why a ninja shouldn't be punished for following orders. Tsunade sighed as she tried to think of a way to calm Naruto down. Sadly, if there was anyone who could sympathize with Itachi, it was Naruto. Look, Naruto, she began softly, how do you think the other villages would react if they found out we were forced to wipe out one of our most powerful clans? Or should we have just let them invade us as we recovered from a civil war? She hoped that Naruto could understand that leaders were sometimes forced to make unpleasant decisions. Naruto, however, seemed unimpressed with her answer. Please, he said sarcastically as he sat down, Kiri isn't as strong as us and they managed to survive a civil war caused by an Uchiha just fine. Tsunade sat there shocked as Naruto gained a thoughtful look on his face. Then again, they do have all that water keeping them safe. Tsunade's eye twitched in annoyance. But there's a lot of land between Konoha and the borders. But those borders lead straight into enemy territory. What do you think, Granny? Will you focus? She snapped. Leave it to Naruto to lose focus thinking about borders while talking about a potential war. Now what's this about an Uchiha starting the civil war in Kiri? Naruto blinked a few times before he remembered what they were talking about. Oh yeah, so there was this guy, and everyone thought he died in the last war, but he didn't. But he did kind of turn into a complete and total. Naruto said with a frown. He pulled Kurama out of Mom, so he's pretty much responsible for ruining my life. Tsunade had no idea who Kurama was, but hearing Naruto talk about his mother was raising more questions than it was answers. Then he hypnotized the fourth Mizukage and started the bloodline purges which lead to the civil war, so he's pretty much responsible for ruining Haku's life. This caught Tsunade's interest. She had no idea Naruto's new friend had a bloodline. Now that she thought about it, she had just left two completely unknown ninja wandering around Konoha. She should probably do something about that. Oh, and let's not forget he was the one who turned Akatsuki into a terrorist organization. Tsunade rubbed her temples. Naruto hadn't even been back 5 minutes and she had a headache. Naruto, I'm going to ask some questions, she said as she reached for a bottle of sake. And you are going to give me short and simple answers that aren't going to raise a million more questions. Got it? Naruto nodded nervously. He could tell she was getting serious. Now then, who is Kurama? Is this Uchiha still a threat? And what does this have to do with Itachi? Naruto scratched his head. Well, there's really no way to answer those simply. But in order, Kurama is the Kyuubi. No, he isn't, and you don't screw with the guy leading a terrorist organization with having to screw with the second in command. Suddenly Naruto's eye widened in terror. Oh crap, I forgot to tell the pervy sage that Konan and Nagato said, hello. Tsunade slammed her head into her desk. With a sigh she sat up and looked at Naruto. Alright, fine. She groaned, we'll get back to all that later. Really, at this point she was tempted to just kick him out of her office and trust that he knew what he was doing. Just answer me this. What exactly made you want to leave in the first place? Naruto's face hardened. Well, that question's probably the easiest to answer. though it will probably take a while. Looking at the clock, he saw that it was still only 8 in the morning. Well, it started about a year ago. X equals. Naruto wiped the sweat off his forehead. He had spent the last few hours sparring with his clones. Ever since that training session where he had blacked out, Jiraiya hadn't been as strong as he had before. Sure, he could still beat Naruto with no effort, but the beatings weren't nearly as bad as they used to be. Naruto sighed and looked down at his hand. Even though Jiraiya hadn't said anything, Naruto was certain that he had lost control of the Kyuubi. He wished he understood why Jiraiya was so determined to have him use the Kyuubi's power. Was there something Jiraiya knew that he didn't? With a sigh, Naruto closed his eyes and began to focus. He didn't want to use the Kyuubi's power, but he also didn't want to accidentally kill someone close to him. Naruto felt the rush of power from the Kyuubi slowly wash over him. He slowly began to increase the power, carefully maintaining focus on his emotions. The more he used, the angrier he got. The angrier he got, the harder it was to control. A vicious cycle if there ever was one. Naruto opened his eyes and froze with horror, or at least he would have if his body wasn't moving on its own. No, 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 no. He thought, since he could scream it out. The veil of blood-red chakra surrounded his body, pull him forward against his will. Why is this happening? He thought. Last time he had lost control, the last thing he heard was the Kyuubi laughing and taunting him. Now there was nothing. It was almost like the chakra itself was moving him around. Naruto could only watch as his body crawled into a small cave that was covered up by the roots of an extremely ancient-looking tree. What is this place? He thought as he crawled deeper and deeper with only the light of Kyuubi's chakra letting him see. Naruto was sure how long he crawled around in there. His body kept moving without rest, only stopping when it needed to dig where the cave was too narrow or blocked. Eventually he reached an open room. Struggling to see in the extremely dim light, Naruto's blood ran cold when he realized that there was a mummified corpse sitting in the center of the room. To his horror, his body moved forward, reaching out to touch the mummy's head. The mummy's 3 eyes lit up and Naruto blacked out. X equals. Now where am I? Naruto mumbled as he sat up. Looking around, he saw he was in what looked like a weird mixture of a sewer and a boiler room. Behind him was a giant cage with a seal holding it closed. How did I get inside my mind? He asked as he stood up. Before he could investigate further, a strange bubbling noise caught his attention. Looking down, he saw the water was slowly draining away. A rattling drew his attention to the walls where several pipes began falling down. Well, this is interesting. A deep voice rumbled behind Naruto. Naruto turned to see his prisoner, the 9-tailed demon fox, staring at him from behind the seal with a rather deranged grin its face. Before Naruto could tell the fox off like usual, it leaned its head back and slammed them into the bars of its prison. To Naruto's horror, the bars, much like the pipes on the walls, fell uselessly to the ground. Naruto slowly backed away as the fox continued to stare at him the same way a predator stares at its prey. But before Naruto could be eaten alive, another unfamiliar voice cut in. Well, Kurama, you seem to have developed a rather cross personality over the ages. Naruto turned and was shocked to see that most of his mindscape had faded into an endless white void. Floating in the middle was a man, that Naruto quickly realized was the same mummy he had seen before he passed out. Though even alive, he still looked incredibly old. And what was with that 3rd eye in the middle of his forehead? That's impossible. Naruto looked and saw the Kyuubi slowly backing away from them, a look of confusion and fear on its face. You're supposed to be dead. Naruto looked back at the man with a look of wonder. Who was this guy and how strong was he if the Kyuubi was scared of him? Excuse me. The old man looked down at Naruto, the same peaceful expression on his face. So who exactly are you and what are we doing in my mind? The Kyuubi growled at Naruto's disrespect while the old man simply laughed. I suppose a proper introduction is in order. He said, I am Hagoromo Otsutsuki. But I believe you have most likely only heard of me by my title, the Sage of Six Paths. Naruto nodded several times before he smiled and politely asked, Who? You idiot. Naruto froze, remembering that the giant fox monster that had almost destroyed his home was currently sitting behind him with nothing separating them. The only reason you can even call yourself a ninja is because of the desecration of the ideals of the man before you. So show some respect. Naruto stared up at the fox. While there were some big words he didn't quite understand from what he got, this guy was the very first ninja. And he must have been powerful considering the respect in the Kyuubi's voice. The few times he had heard the Kyuubi talk before, it had always just smugly taunted him before trying to take control of his body. A laugh brought his attention back to the man in front of him. While Kurama is being overly zealous in coming to my defense, he is correct. He said with a smile. I am Hagoromo Otsutsuki. I was the one who spread the ideals of ninshu, which formed the base of ninjutsu, across the world. It was through my knowledge that humanity learned to access the chakra that lay dormant within everyone. By now Naruto had little stars in his eyes. Who knew what kind of awesome ninja moves he could learn from this guy? Wow. That's amazing. He yelled, much to Kurama's annoyance. So you're the guy who discovered chakra. How'd you do that? Can you teach me to be an awesome ninja like you? Naruto then noticed that Hagoromo's smile seemed to fall a bit at his questions. Perhaps Kurama's paranoia was not as unfounded as I originally believed. Before Naruto could question what he meant, the sage continued, and no. I am neither the discoverer of chakra nor was I the first human to make extensive use of it. Chakra had long been known of by humanity, though few were able to make use of it. The first human to wield chakra as we do was my mother. Naruto clearly had not been expecting that answer. So your mother was the first ninja? Naruto asked, not noticing Hagoromo's face becoming sadder with each word. She must have been amazing. What was she like? How did she become a ninja? Naruto imagined himself as an awesome sage with his mother as a kick-ass ninja cheering him on and supporting him. Before he could continue his fantasy, a sad sigh pulled him from his thoughts. My mother was named Kagaya Otsutsuki. Hagoromo said. She was the princess of a great and powerful kingdom. Within that kingdom was a tree known as the Shinju, which bore a fruit overflowing with chakra. According to legend, eating the fruit would gift a person with a godly level of power. The people of the kingdom never ate the fruit out of fear of the potential power they may unleash. Outsiders frequently attempted to invade the kingdom in order to steal the tree's power for themselves. Eventually my mother grew weary of seeing her home repeatedly be brought to the brink of destruction. She ate the fruit herself, and became so powerful that not only was she able to stop the invasions but she brought an end to all wars everywhere. Naruto's jaw was on the floor with amazement. If they taught stuff like this in history class, maybe he'd pay attention. Then again, maybe they did and he slept through it. But eating the fruit changed something within her. Those who knew my mother before stated that she was kind-hearted and loving. But my entire life I knew her to be nothing but cold and distant even at the best of times. Myself and my brother were both born with incredible power, though nowhere near her level. We began teaching others to use their chakra in order to improve their lives. For some reason this enraged her and she demanded that we cease spreading the secrets of chakra. When we refused, several disciples of ours disappeared. We eventually discovered that they had been murdered. Naruto gulped in fear. We were greatly concerned for her rapidly failing mental health. But before we could intervene, tragedy struck. One day, She observed a young man use chakra to climb a wall to deliver a letter to the woman he was smitten with. Seeing what she felt to be her godly power used for such a mundane task caused something within her to break. She hypnotized the entire kingdom and fed them to the Shinju, turning them into abominations neither man nor plant. When we confronted her, she merged herself with the Shinju, turning into a 10-tailed monstrosity that began ravaging the land, draining the latent chakra of every living thing she came across. By now Hagoromo was struggling to hold back his tears. How did you stop her? Hagoromo looked up at Naruto and saw that Naruto was clearly uncomfortable asking but was still curious. Hagoromo laughed sadly. He supposed if anyone other than him were telling the story it would sound like a fanciful tale. I sealed her chakra within myself while her body was locked within a colossal stone prison in the sky. As I neared the end of my life, I felt extra precautions were necessary. So I split her chakra into 9 fragments and gave each of them a life of its own. In amazement, Naruto turned and looked at the giant fox behind him. I see you understand. The Biju are the result of my mother's lust for power. Their continued existence is what keeps the world safe from her wrath. Finally, Naruto asked the question that had been bothering him the entire time he was here. As interesting as this is, what does all this have to do with me? Hagoromo smiled and explained that his chakra had brought him here as a result of being his second son's incarnation well as having Kurama's chakra. He then warned Naruto about Zetsu, a veil creature that Kagaya had created with the last of her power, and taught Naruto of a fuinjutsu that could stop Kagaya should Zetsu's plans come to fruition. During this time he got to know Kurama, who was still a jerk, though the threats of murder and possession stopped. Eventually Hagoromo bid Naruto farewell, but not before letting Naruto know that he believed if anyone could bring peace to the world it was him. As the sage faded away and his mindscape rebuilt itself, Naruto heard someone calling his name. Looking up, he saw Jiraiya standing over him. When had he gotten back to camp? How long had he been sitting there? Remembering what Hagoromo had told him, he looked up at his teacher. Jiraiya, I think I need to spend the next year training myself. == And then I spent the next year wandering around training. Tsunade nodded. Hearing that the Sage of Six Paths was real and not just a fairy tale had been very interesting. Tsunade finished her sake before looking at Naruto. Very well. She began, we'll need a full up-to-date showing of your skills. Be at Training Ground 7 at 3. We'll test you to see just how good you really are. Naruto looked at the clock and smiled. He still had several hours before he'd even need to start getting ready. Any questions before you leave? Naruto nervously scratched his head. Do you think maybe you could drop your henge for me? He asked. The glare Tsunade sent him told him everything. Please. I just want to try something. I promise nothing bad will happen. Tsunade gave a groan of irritation and reluctantly dropped her transformation. Naruto did his best not to cringe. She may have been in her early 50s, but without the henge so looked like she was in her 70s. So what is it you're trying to do? She asked, her tone of voice telling Naruto he was dead if this was some kind of joke. Naruto smiled and held up his hands, which were now covered in a bizarre golden flame. With a flick of his wrists, the flames extended and swallowed Tsunade up. Before she could protest, Naruto started talking. I'm sure you read all about my yang healing technique, right? Tsunade nodded. Well, I'm still working on the control part. I can't really do fine healing. I can replace an arm if you lost one. But if you broke your arm, I can't make a small amount of bone to mend it. I could give you a new arm bone. But having 1 and 2 halves of a bone really isn't that good for you. Tsunade managed to avoid rolling her eyes at the statement. She was too busy feeling better than she'd felt in years. So when I first found I could do this, I read some books on biology. I thought maybe I could revitalize old cells and reverse aging. But nobody I tried it on got younger. They just had some extra chakra that made them all twitchy for a few hours. So what makes you think it will be any different for me? Tsunade asked. Of course she wasn't complaining. She felt amazing. If this how twitchy people felt, she needed to switch to coffee. Well, your creation rebirth technique heals you by speeding up cell division. I know it's a long shot, but I'm hoping my technique will see the artificial aging as unnatural damage to fix it. Like the difference between a boulder slowly eroding over time and someone with a hammer smashing it to pieces. Naruto lowered his hands and the light around Tsunade began to fade. Now let's see how that worked a little too well. Tsunade's eyes widened in terror as she spun to look at her reflection in the window. If that brat turned her into a kid, she was going to beat him so badly even she wouldn't be able to fix him. What the hell did you? Tsunade's complaint died in her throat. She looked more or less the same as her henge normally did. At worst she looked a few years older. What do you mean too well? I look amazing. Well, I figured if it worked you'd look your actual age, not 20 years younger. Seeing the look of joy on her face, he decided not to question it. So training ground 7 at 3, right? Tsunade nodded while continuing to check herself out. All right, see you then. Naruto opened the door to Tsunade's office and saw Haku and Karen waiting outside. So? Karen asked awkwardly. Do we need to officially be allowed in? Is there something we need to sign? Can we stay here? Naruto smiled and gave her a thumbs up. Of course you can stay here, he said happily. And we can take care of the paperwork later. For now, let Tsunade enjoy her new look. Ignoring the confused looks on their faces, he grabbed their arms and dragged them away. Come on. I can't wait to introduce you to my friends. X equals. Sakura Haruno gave a bored sigh as she browsed the various shop windows. Last night an Anbu had shown up at her house with a message saying the training was cancelled today. She supposed she could meet with Ino, but until she was done with team training she had nothing to do. She wished Naruto would hurry up and get back. The past 3 years had been rather boring without him around. Hey Sakura. The kunoichi's eyes widened as the blonde she had just been thinking about ran towards her with 2 others in tow. Naruto. She asked happily, when did you get back? And who are those 2? She was slightly annoyed that Tsunade hadn't informed her that Naruto was coming back early. Naruto stopped in front of her and looked her over. Well, I'm glad to see you look just as beautiful as you did the day I left. Sakura blushed at this. And these were my teammates while I was gone. You met Haku on our mission to the land of waves. The girly boy gave a nervous laugh. I don't believe we were properly introduced back then, given that I was both your enemy and slightly dead. A look of realization crossed Naruto's face. And this is my girlfriend Karen. The redhead next to him waved before holding her hand out to Haku. And I believe I won the bet, she said. Haku sighed and began digging through his pockets. Seeing Sakura's confused look, Karen smiled. With how much Naruto talked about you as we traveled, we both knew he would compliment you as soon as he saw you. Haku thought he would say something stupid and make you mad. Naruto shot Haku a look as he handed some money to Karen. You do tend to make poor word choices, he said. I was expecting you to say something like, you haven't changed a single bit, but you managed to surprise me. Ha ha ha. Naruto said sarcastically. I know how to talk to girls. You should know that. Haku and Karen shared a look and a snicker. So Sakura, what was it like having the Hokage as a teacher? Sakura smiled. He may be more mature, but he was still Naruto. Well, it was really hard. But it was also a lot of fun. To start with, Sakura started telling Naruto about the training she had done for the past 3 years. But as they talked, they didn't notice the pair of pure white eyes narrowing into a hate-filled glare. That's so cool, Naruto exclaimed. Do you think maybe you could teach us some of that cool medical stuff? He asked. Sakura noticed that all three of them were giving her a hopeful look. This surprised her. Naruto wanting to be a medic. She would have laughed and played it off as a joke if the look he gave her wasn't completely serious. Seriously? She asked. All three of you want to be medics? Naruto and Karen shared a look before looking at Haku, then back at Sakura. Well, I think Haku's the only one interested in specializing in it. He responded, and he already knows a lot about the basics. He's really good with herbs, and don't forget he's the one who put Zabuza in a near-death state and helped him recover from it. Sakura nodded with excitement. The 13-year-old Sakura with no medical training couldn't appreciate just how difficult it was to put someone into a near-death state. And Haku had done it in the middle of a battle. Naruto had just brought Konoha a potential goldmine of a medic. What about you and Karen? She asked. The Naruto she knew was more a beat the crap out of the bad guys before they hurt someone, rather than a healer. Karen looked smart enough to be a healer, but looks didn't count for much in the ninja world. Look underneath the underneath. We both have chakra with healing properties. Even if we aren't medics, it'd probably still be good to know. Naruto said with a smile while Karen was looking at Haku while pouting and mumbling something about, only he can use my chakra. Sakura smiled. Naruto's new friends seemed a little weird, but they also seemed nice. Come on, Naruto, she said as she grabbed his hand. I can't wait to tell everyone you're back. She began to pull Naruto along. And you'll have to tell me all about what happened while you were gone. Naruto sighed happily. It was nice being back in Konoha. He even got to hold Sakura's hand. Sadly, before he could enjoy it, the familiar sensation of death bearing down on him caught his attention. He quickly grabbed Sakura in his arms and jumped backwards, ignoring her startled screams. Naruto, what the hell do you think you're doing? She screeched. Looks like she tried to kill you again. Haku said blankly. Sakura was about to ask what he meant when she saw the road in front of them. It was covered in what looked to be dozens of wires sticking out of the ground like giant darts. What are those? She asked as Naruto put her down. Where did they come from? She reached out to touch one when Karen grabbed her hand. Don't touch those, she warned. They will drain your chakra, potentially fatally. As for where they came from, you can thank the rabbit bitch. Karen, what did I tell you about being nice? Naruto asked as he walked past Sakura wearing gloves covered with seals. Nice, she snapped back. With how many times she's tried to kill us, I'll call her whatever the I want. Naruto began plucking the wires, causing them to go limp and revealing them to be strands of hair. Well, technically she was only trying to kill me, he said. You and Haku just happened to be in the way. Karen growled, apparently unsatisfied with the answer, while Sakura was more confused than ever. Who are you talking about? What's going on? The three ninja pointed to the roof of a nearby building. Sakura followed their fingers and gasped at what she saw. Sitting on the roof was one of the most beautiful women she'd ever seen. She was wearing a kimono similar to the ones she'd seen in paintings of ancient nobility. She had long flowing white hair, that apparently served as a weapon. Oddly, besides having pure white eyes, she had what looked like horns plus a large red eye in the middle of her forehead. Sakura could see several seals on her neck and wrists. But what really caught her attention was that her beautiful face was twisted into the foulest scowl she had ever seen. Who is that? Naruto finished collecting the hairs and waved to the woman. Better luck next time, Kagaya, he yelled. If possible, her scowl got even fouler as the space behind he warped into a portal that swallowed her up. Sakura's head was starting to hurt. Naruto, who was that? She asked as Naruto finished picking up Kagaya's hair and started pulling his gloves off. That was Kagaya Otsutsuki. He said, she was the very first ninja. Unfortunately all that power drove her insane, so I'm going to fix her. Haku and Karen groaned. Apparently they didn't feel the same way. Naruto, she couldn't possibly be the first ninja. Sakura said, that would make her at least 1,000 years old. Naruto laughed and gave her a thumbs up. Yeah, I hope I look that good when I'm 1,000. He said completely seriously. Sakura looked to Haku and Karen for support, but apparently they believed Naruto's story. Now come on. I remember you saying something about catching up with everyone. Naruto began to walk away, followed by Haku and Karen, with Sakura bringing up the rear. Will someone please explain what's going on? X equals. Ino Yamanaka gave an annoyed sigh. She loved her team, she really did. But some days they could be so frustrating. Today all they had done was some warm-ups followed by taijutsu spars. After that they had practiced several Ino Shika Cho formations followed by a cool down. Now they were getting lunch at the barbecue place, which was Asuma's sign that they were done for the day. Sure, Shikamaru had some meeting with Tamari later, but there was no reason Asuma couldn't keep training he and Choji. She swore that if not for her constant complaining they would never get anything done. Her attention was drawn to the entrance as her best friend Sakura walked in with two people she didn't recognize and a blonde she was very surprised to see. Naruto, she asked, is that you? Choji and Shikamaru were drawn out of their conversation by her question. When did you get back? Naruto smiled and waved at them. Hey guys. What's up? He walked over followed by Sakura and the two mystery people. So like I was saying, he said to Sakura. With all the seals on her she's about as strong as all 5 Kage put together. Sakura paled in fear while Team Asuma looked confused. Was he talking about one of the girls with him? They didn't seem that strong. Troublesome. Shikamaru groaned. So Naruto, what happened on your trip and who are the girls? Naruto and the redhead laughed while the brunette got an annoyed smile. The redhead is Karen, she waved while looking at the menu the waiter had brought over. And the guy with the sword is her boyfriend Haku. Everyone stared at Naruto before looking at Haku. He waved at them. Yes, I'm aware I look like a girl. Naruto and Karen snickered. And I believe these two have a bet over how many people will make that mistake. I believe we're up to 5. So you want to hear about my trip? Naruto said. Well, let's see. I think a lot of it needs to be cleared by Tsunade before I talk about it. Oh, I know, I can tell you about my trip to the land of water. His classmates listened with interest while Asuma wondered why Naruto would be in the land of water since last he had heard it was in the middle of a civil war. So it all started when I met this guy named Utakata. He's a pretty cool guy, I think you guys would like him. So anyways, I'm walking on the beach when I see this guy blowing bubbles. He seems interesting, so I stopped to talk to him. Well, one thing led to another. Naruto spent the next few hours telling them all about his trip to the land of water, from his first meeting with Utakata to meeting and training with the rebels. They thought they could hide in the mist, but they didn't realize the mist was filled with steam. So when they hid too long, their armor started melting. They tried to run, but we caught them into everything that wasn't starting to melt. Everyone was listening, amazed to hear that the class idiot had already fought in a war. So with all the extra weapons we had with went. Sakura Haruno. Everyone turned to see an Anbu standing behind them. The Hokage has ordered you to report to Training Ground 7 in an hour. Naruto looked at the clock and saw it was now 2. Sorry guys. He said as he stood up and paid for his lunch. My evaluation's in an hour. I'll talk to you later. Team Asuma all sadly groaned. Come on. You can't leave us hanging like that. Ino whined. What happened next? Choji and Shikamaru nodded in agreement. Naruto smiled and pointed at the clock. What happens next is Shikamaru gets in trouble for not meeting Temari on time. Naruto walked away laughing while Shikamaru stared off into space before he bolted out of the restaurant. Troublesome. X equals. Did we really have to leave early? Sakura asked. Her and Naruto were walking alone since Haku and Karen had gotten directions to Naruto's house and taken off, though Naruto had invited them to watch his evaluation. No, but that seemed like a good place to stop, he replied. Otherwise I'd still be in the middle of the story when I had to leave. Sakura was curious what happened if that didn't qualify as the middle. Before she could continue that train of thought, her and Naruto saw two more of their classmates walking towards them. Hey Kiba. Crap, what was Kiba's teammate's name? Naruto racked his brain of answers before finally remembering. Shino. What's up, Shino? Kiba waved while Shino calmly walked behind him. Yo Naruto. When did you get back? Kiba asked while the giant dog next to him barked happily. Naruto started petting the dog. I just got back today. I'm getting ready for my evaluation, he said. And I'm guessing this little guy is Akamaru? He asked as he scratched him behind the ears. Yes he is. Yes he is. Kiba laughed at Akamaru, knowing he hated people baby talking to him. Hello Naruto. Shino said. I am surprised you remember me. Why? Because the two of us have rarely interacted before this. Naruto scratched the back of his head, not wanting Shino to know how right he was. Come on Shino. He said nervously, who could forget about you? Naruto couldn't tell what Shino was thinking due to his glasses, but he had the feeling Shino didn't believe him. Man, it sucks you got back today. Kiba said. We were just about to leave for a mission. You need to tell us all about your trip, man. So, you have any luck with the ladies? Sakura was about to tell Kiba to shut up and stop being a pervert while Naruto had a rather pervy grin. Before either could voice their thoughts, everyone was forced to jump away from a giant tiger made of ink. I've only been home one day and I've already been attacked twice. Seriously, universe. What the hell? Naruto angrily muttered as he threw a kunai straight into the tiger's head. Where'd it come from? Up there. Sakura said, point at a roof down the street. Naruto looked and saw a very pasty kid with short black hair and a bizarre revealing outfit. He opened a scroll and grabbed a brush before drawing faster than anyone could follow. His drawings turned into a pack of tigers and attacked the group of friends. Naruto quickly summoned several clones to deal with them. Soon the street was filled with ink splotches and smoke. The creepy kid looked around, unable to see Naruto anywhere. You know it's rude to attack people you haven't even met yet. The creepy kid spun around and saw Naruto sitting right behind him. You know I have this interesting ability to sense emotions. Negative emotions are easier, but I can still feel the positive ones. He stood up and slowly approached the creepy kid. Usually when someone's trying to kill me like that, they have a lot of negative emotions. But you don't really have any emotions at all. You wouldn't happen to be one of those rude creeps I was warned about, would you? The creepy kid's eyes shot open before he quickly schooled his features. Do me a favor, he said as he leaned close. Tell Danzo his past is about to catch up to him. The creepy kid stared for a few seconds before he burst into ink. Naruto jumped down and rejoined the others. What the hell was up with that guy? Kiba asked. Naruto looked at the ink splattered everywhere and decided he better leave before someone made him clean it up. Just some overly enthusiastic guy who couldn't wait to test me. Speaking of testing, me and Sakura need to get to training ground 7. Go luck on your mission, guys. Later, Hinata. A loud squeak got Kiba and Shino's attention. Hinata poked her head out from behind the tree she was hiding behind. As she watched Naruto and Sakura walk away, all she could think was, why didn't he want to talk to me? X equals. Naruto and Sakura entered Training Ground 7. Remembering when they first became ninja, they weren't surprised to see Kakashi sitting on the training logs. Kakashi gave them his usual eye smile and closed the book he was reading. Hello Naruto, Sakura. It's been a while, hasn't it? You both look like you've done a lot of growing in the past 3 years. Hey sensei, Naruto said, still reading those trashy romance novels. Kakashi's eye twitched. Trashy romance novel was a step up from, but that was still his favorite book. Being insulted. Glad to see you're just as loud-mouthed as you've always been. Now it was Naruto's turn to eye twitch. Kakashi held up a pair of bells. I don't think I need to remind you how this test works. Come at me with the intent to kill or you'll never win. He attached the bells to his belt. And go. With that he vanished. Naruto and Sakura slipped into fighting stances. Any idea where his is? Naruto asked. They looked around but saw no sign of their teacher. Sakura thought for a moment before pulling a pair of gloves out of her pocket. Well, last time he hid underground, she said as she pulled them on. Let's see if he thinks we forgot about that. Sakura pulled her fist back and smashed the entire training ground to bits. Naruto and the newly uncovered Kakashi both stared in horror. Note to self, they both thought, never get hit by her. I see she picked up your strength. Jiraiya said as he and Tsunade watched from a nearby tree. Bleach her blonde and she'd be a miniature you. Indeed, she's rather impressive. Karen said as she and Haku jumped onto the branch next to them. I see why Naruto wouldn't shut up about her. Well, actually she couldn't do that when he left. Tsunade said. Noticing the Haku had changed into a more combat-appropriate outfit, she asked. What's with the costume change? I would assume if Karen and I are going to join Konoha you'd need to evaluate us to assess our rank. We figured this would be a good time to do so. Not if they take too long getting the bells. Jiraiya said, knowing Kakashi they could be out here all night. Haku and Karen laughed. You seriously have no idea just how powerful Naruto is. Karen replied. Though I'd be amazed if he was forced to reveal his full strength here. Something bad would have to happen to push him that far. X equals. Hundreds of miles away outside of Sunagakura, 4 figures stood covered with black cloaks with purple music notes on them with a pinwheel eye in the center of them. Several Jonin in Suna uniforms stood behind them. We got all your spies out, the blonde one said to the hunchback. Can I please start blowing stuff up? The hunchback growled in annoyance. Yes, Deidara. He rasped in an extremely gravely voice. Just make sure you remember to use the special explosives you were given. Deidara laughed and summoned a giant unnaturally white bird. You got it, Sasori, my man, he said as he flew off. The hunchback turned to look at the Jonin behind him. Head to Otogakure, he said. We'll plan our next move once I get back. The ex-Suna non bowed and ran off. Let's go, Sasori said as the other 2 cloaked ninja followed him and the first explosions went off over Suna. X equals. Get ready, Kakashi, Naruto said as he charged up a Rasengan. Because I'm going to AAAHHH. He dropped to his knees and grabbed his head. With a flash of pain he found himself sitting in an endless white void. Kurama was sitting behind him while 8 glowing fireballs sat in a circle around him. One had grown a large tanuki face. Naruto. It screamed, it's just like Kokuo and Chome warned. Suna's under attack. There's at least 4. I'm pretty sure all of them are ex-Akatsuki. Help. Naruto removed his hands from his ears. Don't worry, Shukaku. I'll be there as soon as possible. Just hold them off for as long as you can. The tanuki nodded and faded away. Let's do this, Kurama, he said as the fox behind him got an insane grin. Naruto. Sakura yelled as tried to get his attention. Are you okay, Naruto? Kakashi stood off to the side. He was worried about Naruto, but he wasn't dumb enough to just walk up to him in the middle of a test. Suddenly Naruto jumped up. Sorry Kakashi, but I need to end this right now. Kakashi braced for an attack as Naruto held up his hand. Dark rings appeared around Naruto's eyes as he channeled chakra through his hand. Suddenly the bells flew from his belt and into Naruto's hand. Naruto tossed one to Sakura. We win. Got to go. Haku. Karen. Let's go. Haku and Karen jumped from the tree along with Jiraiya and Tsunade. Naruto, what's going on? Tsunade asked. Naruto began channeling the same golden chakra and healed her with, only this time it spread over his entire body. Suna's under attack. He said, the three of us will go on ahead. You send backup. Before Sakura or Tsunade could protest, Naruto's chakra exploded. Where a teenage human once stood was now a giant golden nine-tailed fox. A glowing chain shot out of Karen's wrist and wrapped around his neck. She grabbed Haku and pulled them onto Naruto's back. The fox turned and jumped away. Tsunade stared in shock before turning to the masked Jonin. Kakashi, get ready. Team Kakashi and Team Asuma are providing backup to Suna. Now. Alright, listen up. Tsunade said as she looked at the ninja assembled before her. Approximately 15 minutes ago, Naruto Uzumaki, along with his two new self-proclaimed teammates, took off for Suna. They claim that Suna is under attack but failed to provide any details. You are to follow after them, provide assistance in the event they were right, and drag them back here so I can remind them that they can't just go running off whenever they want. Any questions? Sakura stepped forward. Lady Tsunade, she began, I believe I saw that creepy Kagaya woman chasing after him. Do you want us to do something about her too? Tsunade thought back and recalled seeing someone in white chasing after them. Wait, Kagaya, Tsunade said nervously. As in Kagaya Otsutsuki? Sakura nodded, not enjoying the look of fear crossing Tsunade's face. Is that idiot trying to get us all killed? What the hell is he thinking, just letting her wander around? Naruto claims that she has several seals on her body that allows him to somewhat control her. Sakura said. But even still he claims she could fight all 5 Kage and win. Tsunade groaned. She was really starting to regret just letting Naruto skim over the details of his trip. You are to stay as far away from her as possible. Once Naruto gets back, I'll have him fill me in. Any more questions? Nobody spoke up. Then move out. Team Kakashi and Team Asuma turned to chase after their favorite blonde idiot. == The desert sun was beating down as Naruto, still a giant golden fox, ran as fast as he could across the dunes. Riding on his back were his teammates, Haku and Karen, and their new passenger Temari. They had spotted her right at the edge of the land of fire and picked her up after quickly explaining what was happening. So do we have any idea who's attacking Suna? Karen asked Naruto. Luckily, when Naruto went full-tailed beast mode, he still appeared on top of Kurama's head so they could still talk to him. Well, I can't talk to Shukaku when my system is flooded with Kurama's chakra like this, he said, but from the way he was describing everything blowing up, I'm guessing that Dei something guy is there. I believe the name you're looking for is Deidara. Haku said. And if the ex-Akatsuki's structure hasn't been changed too much, Sasori of the Red Sand is most likely with him. Temari paled at that. Having a brother who was interested puppets meant she had heard all the horror stories of what Sasori had done. Right. Those two. Naruto said. But he didn't say anything about the other two. He said it seemed like they were just keeping the other Suna ninja from interfering. None of the ninja liked the sound of that. Naruto, do you think this could be a trap? Temari asked. With 4 S-class missing nin attacking and only one actually doing any damage and the other 3 stalling for time, it looked like a trap. Most likely, Naruto said. But soon as under attack, I'm not about to just let my friends be killed because it's safer for me to run away. I'd be a pretty crappy Hokage if I did stuff like that. Everyone smiled at that. Naruto wasn't letting all his newfound power go to his head. X equals. Gaara raised another wall of sand in front of him to shield himself from the latest explosion to be launched at him. So far outside of destroying several buildings surrounding the Cage Tower and verbally taunting him, the attacker hadn't made any direct moves at him. So what were they waiting for? Gaara. The Cage looked up and saw a giant golden fox falling towards him. In a flash of light it vanished, leaving behind 4 teens. Don't worry. Team Naruto is here to save the day. Before anyone could point out how dumb his intro was, a manic laughter got their attention. Well, what do you know? Deidara said with an insane grin. Just like we planned. Attack the raccoon and the fox will come running. I didn't think it'd work, but here we are. Deidara. The blonde looked over his shoulder to see his partner approaching. A raccoon and a tanuki are 2 separate creatures. Use your brain before you accidentally blow yourself up. Deidara growled and was about to retort when another voice cut in. Raccoon. Tanuki. Who gives a flying? Let's just kill the dipshits already. Naruto tensed at the approaching pair. One was tall and thin with swept-back silver hair, carrying a 3-bladed scythe. The other was equally tall, wearing a black mask over his head with creepy red and green eyes. It was Hidan of Yugakure and Kakuzu of Takigakure, the infamous zombie brothers. Well, isn't this a nice little reunion? Naruto said sarcastically. Where's the 2-faced plant creep? He too scared to show up. Really, he was nervous. Haku and Karen had gotten stronger since they started training together, but they weren't S rank. Even with the ninja of Suna backing them up, he wasn't sure if they could take them all. Deidara's laughter got his attention. Funny you should say that. He said as he went through several hand seals. I was given a special explosive just for this mission. When he finished the last seal, the residue that coated the area began to glow. Several large blobs clustered together and began to take a familiar shape. Before anyone could react, they were surrounded by an army of Zetsu. Well, shit, Karen said as everyone took a fighting stance. Any ideas, Naruto? Naruto looked at the army surrounding them before giving a sigh of defeat. He really didn't want to do this, but he had no choice. He made a seal and spiked his chakra. Sensing an attack, one of the Zetsu charged him, only to stop inches from him as something grabbed the back of its head. Everyone slowly backed away. Standing in front of Naruto was Kagaya, a look of curiosity on her face. Kagaya, Naruto said slowly. If you promise to be good and not kill any of our allies, I'll let you keep the seal that blocks your ability to drain chakra off. He sighed again. Permanently. Do we have a deal? Kagaya's face slowly twisted into an insane grin. The Zetsu in her grip began to scream as it violently thrashed and clawed at her hand before slowly crumbling into a withered wooden husk. The Zetsu began to shake with fear as Kagaya turned to stare at them, a Cheshire cat grin splitting her face. Before any of them could react, she pounced on them and began draining them one by one. Well, that's one problem solved. Karen said, but what are we going to do about them? Before anyone replied, a bird made of clay dive-bombed them, exploding on impact. Everyone jumped away from the explosion, but quickly realized it had only served to separate them. Great. Karen said blankly as Kakuzu stood across from her. So I end up fighting the little girl, he said. I'm very busy, so at least try to make it enter. Kakuzu's hearts leapt from his body as 5 glowing chakra chains pierced his chest. He stared at the chains before he slowly pulled his cloak off. You just destroyed one of my hearts. He calmly stated. Normally I'd be upset. But seeing as you're offering something as rare and valuable as an Uzumaki heart to replace it, I suppose I can forgive you. Kakuzu's tentacles lashed out, entangling themselves in Karen's chains. His remaining hearts surrounded her and launched attacks at her. She quickly summoned a shield of chains to surround herself, but was barely able to hold the attacks off. Shit, 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 shit. She swore as another barrage of attacks smashed her chains. I can't beat him in a straight fight, so I'll have to outsmart him. Another barrage nearly broke through her shield. I hope Haku isn't having as much trouble as me. X equals. Haku stared at his opponent, unsure of what to do. When he found himself faced with Hidan, he quickly summoned his ice mirrors to ensure the insane cultist couldn't get his blood for his ritual. The downside was although he was safe from harm, he couldn't do any real damage to Hidan. The immortal nin shrugged off his Senbon like they were nothing, and Haku wasn't sure he could maintain his speed and use the Kubikiribocho at the same time. Hey sissy. Hidan screamed. How about you get your little faggot transvestite out of your little makeup mirror and fight me like a real ninja? Or are you too busy bleeding like the little bitch you are? Haku ignored the comment and launched another wave of Senbon at him. Hidan quickly blocked most of them, and the ones he didn't were easily removed. Bitch, put down the sewing needles and fight me. Hidan smashed his scythe into one of the mirrors, leaving huge cracks all over it. Seeing an opening, Haku refroze the mirror, trapping Hidan's scythe. He quickly moved behind Hidan and swung Kubikiribocho as hard as he could. The massive blade entered the immortal's shoulder before stopping in his chest. Haku pulled the blade out and jumped back into the mirrors as Hidan broke loose and smashed several other mirrors. You faggot. I'm going to enjoy ripping you limb from limb. Another mirror was smashed as Haku began to struggle repairing them. I can't maintain my mirrors in this desert environment, he weakly said to himself. I hope Karen and Naruto are doing better than me. I don't know how much longer I can hold out. X equals. Naruto stared down Sasori. He had tried to send some clones to aid Haku and Karen, but the puppet in front of him had quickly taken them out. So, he said as he slowly began to circle his opponent. It seems like Akatsuki held together pretty well even after Nagato disbanded it. Though none of you ever really seemed to enjoy working together. Kind of odd that you would stick with each other. Unless there's a new puppet master pulling your strings now. Naruto ducked as Sasori's tail lashed out with lightning speed. Naruto summoned a pair of clones to flank him, and the trio launched a barrage of air bullets at him. His tail quickly twisted around his body, taking most of the hit. I don't know why you bother asking. Sasori rasped out. You are already well aware of our plans. Though how you learned of them is a mystery I would like to solve. His tail whipped around and destroyed one clone while he spit several Senbon at the other. Naruto summoned more clones and continued to try to get into Sasori's blind spots. Actually, I'm just making a few educated guesses. I have a few concrete facts, but most of your plan eludes me. Naruto began to focus his chakra to his throat, knowing that he had only one shot at this. And just because somebody is on your side doesn't mean your enemies can't learn from them. Naruto took a deep breath and spat at Sasori. Thinking it was another air bullet, Sasori raised his tail to block it, but was shocked when a glob of lava began melting his tail. Before he could react, a clone with a Rasengan smashed into his back. Naruto jumped back to see if he'd done any damage. Sasori's tail was now fully burned off and the armor on his back was filled with cracks. His body parts were all twitching as he tested their movement. You damaged my favorite puppet, he said slowly. I can tell that you're going to become quite the thorn in our sides. Though I'm curious as to when you obtained the ability to use lava release. None of our intel indicated you had this ability. Naruto frowned. He had been hoping that his Rasengan would destroy Sasori's armor completely. Now his enemy knew one of his biggest secrets. Thankfully he hadn't worked out the source of his secret. No matter, Sasori said as he armed his weapons. Killing you and the cage just became higher priority. Naruto summoned more clones. I thought your plans revolved around capturing the Jinchuriki, not killing them. Not that it matters since neither one of us is going down, the clones charged as Sasori fired his arsenal. Those were the plans of the old Akatsuki that you dismantled, he said. We no longer need the Jinchuriki or the beasts they hold. We simply need them out of our way. The last clone was destroyed and Naruto and Sasori locked eyes. And make no mistake, one way or another, two of our enemies will die tonight. X equals. Gaara sent several tendrils of sand towards Deidara, who easily dodged and weaved out of the way, before launching several explosions his way. Gaara's theory that they had been stalling was proven correct as Deidara was now focusing all of his attacks directly at the village leader. Gaara pulled his sand back and cut Deidara's leg. Damn it, he hissed. I should have known fighting you low to the ground was a mistake. I can't believe I had to carry all that shit to summon all these weaklings. If I had a full supply of explosives you'd have been dead long ago. He threw several more clay spiders at Gaara who easily blocked them again. Then I suppose I should consider myself lucky that you aren't fully armed, he blankly said. Though it would have been a good plan had Naruto not brought that woman with him. Deidara growled. You. He snapped. I don't need pity from the guy I'm about to kill. Besides, even with that bitch holding off the freaks, that doesn't change the fact that two of your backup are nowhere near out level. They'll be dead soon enough and then their opponents will come for you. Deidara laughed and set off another round of explosives. He's right. Gaara thought. I need to end this quickly. X equals. Naruto ducked under another wave of Senbon. When Sasori had stopped spitting them he had assumed the puppet was out of ammo. Sadly the puppet's body was covered with Senbon launchers which had made creating clones or getting close impossible. But now he noticed something new. Why isn't he attacking me? Naruto asked himself. He has enough puppets that he supposedly destroyed an entire country by himself. So why is he shooting Senbon at me with a broken puppet? Naruto became very nervous. There were 4 S-rank missing nin here plus an army of Zetsu. If they really wanted to kill him and Gaara they could have easily teamed up the kill Gaara then turned on him when he showed up. But instead they had waited until he showed up and now they were drawing the fights out causing lots of damage, but not actually killing anyone. What were they waiting for? A scream got his attention as something crashed in between them. The dust cleared revealing Kagaya draining another Zetsu as it weakly struggled in her grip. So that's how it is. Sasori said getting Kagaya's attention. Looks like we're forced to use the fallback plan. A tube extended from Sasori's back and fired a flare as Kagaya raced forward and grabbed him by the head. She attempted to drain his chakra but quickly found no chakra to drain. Confused she looked up and saw Naruto running away chasing someone wearing the same cloak as the man she was holding. Looking down she saw that she was holding an empty suit of armor. With a snarl she crushed the puppet's head before turning to try and find some more Zetsu to drain. X equals. So things have gone that badly. Hidan said as he looked at the flare. Well, at least now I get to kill a bitch. He slashed his hand and began using his blood to draw a symbol on the ground. Haku tensed up as he waited to see what Hidan would do. He hadn't been cut, so why was Hidan starting his ritual? Hidan finished drawing his symbol and pulled a vial of blood from his pocket. He drank it, turning his skin into a bizarre black and white making him look like a skeleton. Haku began to panic. Whose blood was that? Could they have somehow gotten my blood? Or someone else in our group? Hidan reached into his cloak and pulled out a long thin sword. Well, this has been fun. See you in hell. Hidan stabbed himself in the heart and Haku reflexively grabbed his chest. After a few seconds he slowly relaxed. I'm still alive, he whispered. He didn't get me. Oh thank goodness. He looked up to see Hidan grinning sickly as he slowly pulled the sword from his chest. Hidan giggled insanely as he put the sword away and stepped out of the ring. But who did he kill? Hidan held up his scythe and smashed one of the mirrors. Got to go, he said. I'm going to need to do a lot of praying to make up for not killing your little bitch. He then turned and ran off. Haku stared for a few seconds before chasing after him. I can't let him hurt anyone else, he thought. Karen, Naruto, please be safe. X equals. Karen panted as sweat ran down her face. She wasn't going to last much longer. Kakuzu's hearts gave off enough chakra that her mind's eye of the Kagura allowed her to predict their movements and dodge their attacks. Unfortunately, beyond using her chains to hold the hearts back, she hadn't been able to do a thing to Kakuzu. Now the greedy bounty hunter was starting to look bored. Is that all? He asked. After that first attack, I was expecting something better. But here it turns out that one of my hearts was destroyed by a lucky shot, he growled angrily. There's no point in dragging this out any longer. Now die. Karen sensed an attack from behind, so she spun around and used a chain to smack down a fireball. Feeling the last of her chakra fade, she collapsed and passed out, but not before she saw the heart that attacked her explode in a shower of gore. What the do you think you're doing? Kakuzu yelled. Don't take it personally, Sasori said as he had the third cage withdraw his iron sand. I bear you no ill will. But the fact of the matter is that at this point you are unneeded for our operation to continue. In fact, your continued presence is currently holding us back. So now, for the good of the mission, die. Sasori sent another wave of iron sand at Kakuzu, who attempted to counter by firing a pulse of lighting. While Kakuzu's body and lighting heart escaped damage, his earth and wind hearts were destroyed. He quickly pulled his lighting heart back into his body, knowing that he would die if it was destroyed. And what happens when you're no longer needed for the operation? He asked. You seem to believe that since you're the one doing the backstabbing now, that somehow makes you immune to it in the future. Sasori sealed the third cage and pulled a katana from his cloak. If I am no longer needed for the operation, then that means the operation was a success, he replied before charging Kakuzu. The Heart Stealer dodged, knowing that even he couldn't withstand being poisoned by the deranged puppet master. Focusing his chakra around his fist, he punched as hard as he could and was satisfied as Sasori's head flew from his shoulders. But before he could celebrate, Sasori's headless boy swung at him, barely giving him time to dodge. Sasori's head flew back to his body and twisted back on in a sickening manner. So, those rumors of just how far you've taken your human puppet technique are true. Sasori didn't respond, instead charging him again. Kakuzu expertly avoided his strikes while attempting to put his fist through Sasori's chest. Sadly, having a puppet body meant the Sasori could twist and bend in very inhuman ways and not lose any fighting ability. After several minutes of going nowhere, Kakuzu saw an opening and punched. Sasori turned as the fist gently grazed his chest. Kakuzu prepared to follow up but found his arm moving very slowly. Too late, he realized that Sasori's free hand had been weaving chakra threads that were now holding his arm in place. Before he could pull free, Sasori stabbed his final heart. Kakuzu spat up blood and glared at his red-headed opponent. Enjoy your victory for now, he growled as he thought back to the leaders of Taki who had locked him up as punishment for failing to kill the first Hokage. A leader willing to sacrifice his followers to further his own goals will turn on you sooner or later. Remember that. Sasori simply cut Kakuzu's head off and quickly sealed his body. Sasori then turned and approached Karen. Now what to do with you? He asked himself. You held off Kakuzu, which is impressive, but in the long run I doubt you'll amount to anything impressive. He raised his sword overhead. Still, I would rather err on the side of caution. He brought his sword down to stab Karen, but was stopped by a kunai. Naruto had once again gotten in his way. I don't have time for this, he blankly said and made a seal. Another wave of explosions went off, but unlike the others that were centered around the cage tower, these happened all over Suna. Shit. Naruto jumped over Karen to protect her from an explosion that went off nearby. Looking up, he saw Sasori was gone. He grabbed Karen and ran towards the cage tower. He saw Gaara giving orders while several Jonin were leading squads to contain the fires. Haku was standing next to him looking exhausted. What happened? Naruto asked as he landed next to them. Deidara was preparing to set off a giant bomb that would have caused massive damage to the city, he replied. Suddenly he grabbed his chest and collapsed. Haku's opponent then came and retrieved the body. Before we could begin pursuit, the explosions went off. What happened to Karen? Haku asked nervously as he took her from Naruto. Is she going to be okay? She isn't hurt, is she? She'll be fine, Naruto said. She's just suffering a mild case of chakra exhaustion. And you know how quickly an Uzumaki can get over that. He and Haku laughed weakly. Well, Haku said, I guess I'll just take her to the hospital. Haku passed out as his own chakra exhaustion caught up with him. Naruto created a pair of clones to take them to the hospital while he helped Gaara clean up the mess he had created. == A few days later, teams Asuma, Kakashi, and Naruto were finishing with their initial aid to Suna. Ino and Sakura had quickly helped the injured at the hospital, Choji and Shikamaru had helped with the reconstruction, Asuma and Kakashi were helping coordinate the Jonin leading the reconstruction, and Naruto had his clones running around acting as messengers. Thanks to them, most of the minor damage had been fixed, though the cage tower and the area around it was still trashed. Currently Naruto was helping Ino and Sakura at the hospital. The explosions were the cause of most of the injuries, Ino said looking over the charts they had. According to witnesses, these Zetsu guys weren't putting up much of a fight, when suddenly out of nowhere they exploded. Have you ever seen them do something like this? Naruto shook his head. No, I've never seen a Zetsu explode, he said. I've seen them merge together into large monsters, but I've never seen them fuse with explosives like that. I really hope they don't start doing that regularly. Sakura tried to be optimistic and gave Naruto a smile. Well, if they do, we'll just have to find a way to stop them. Naruto smiled and nodded, not having the heart to let her know just how bad the situation was going to get. Not yet, at least. Now the only person left to check is Haku. Karen said she was going to get the healing started, and I'm curious to see how well it worked. Sakura walked away and Naruto was about to go see if Kakashi needed anything else when what Sakura said caught up to him. Oh, shit, Naruto said. A loud scream filled the air. Ino and Naruto quickly ran down the hall to find Sakura sailing in a doorway with her eyes bugging out of her head. What the hell do you think you're doing? She screamed. This is a hospital. You can't do that here. Ino and Naruto entered the room and Naruto saw exactly what he was expecting. Which was Karen in nothing but her panties straddling Haku, who was biting one of her. The two groups stared awkwardly at each other before Naruto poked Sakura's shoulder. Sakura, remember when I said Karen's chakra had healing properties? She nodded slowly. Well, her chakra only heals when it's sucked out of her. That's why she wanted to learn regular healing. She doesn't want someone who isn't her boyfriend biting her. Ino and Sakura blushed at the implications. Hey guys, they looked up and saw Karen staring at them. I don't mind you staying to watch, but could you please stop talking? You're killing the mood. The trio blushed brighter and left, slamming the door behind them. Karen shrugged and resumed grinding against Haku. Now where were we? She asked in a tone. Haku answered her by grabbing her and biting her other. Oh yeah, right there baby. Just like that. Outside the three Konoha nin grabbed their noses to stop the bleeding and ran off to find some tissues. X equals. Meanwhile, in the land of rice fields the citizens of the new Otogakur were going about their business. Right now it was just a large town, but once all the construction on the outskirts was finished it would be a small city, comparable to other shinobi villages. In the central tower Sasori is giving a mission report to 4 people. The explosive Zetsu did not cause as much damage as we were hoping. A woman in white, matching the description of the Kagaya woman we were told to look out for, drained most of them of their chakra. A growl came from the corner. But we were successful in removing Deidara and Kakuzu. Excellent. The man behind the desk said. We can begin making preparations to move to phase 2. Sasori gave a bow a turn to walk away. And Sasori, please tell Hidan that if he can put off praying long enough to walk back here, he can put off praying long enough to give his own report. Sasori nodded and left. So what do you think? He asked a figure in the corner. I observed for as long as I could without being detected. Zetsu said. I have not yet managed to learn how Uzumaki is controlling Mother. Or how he turned her against us, her loyal servants. The leader nodded. Very well. Continue to observe her as frequently as possible. If we can recruit her to our side it will make things much easier. Zetsu nodded and sank into the floor. The remaining 2 people stepped in front of the desk. What are your thoughts? The tall orange-haired boy spoke up first. Having Kagaya on our side would be in our best interests, he said calmly. But based on Zetsu's observations we cannot hope for her to help us. I think ensuring that phase 2 goes off without any hitches is the best course of action at this point. The leader nodded and looked at the pinkett next to Jugo. The you expect me to say? She snapped. You're the leader of this shithole. I'm just here to up that pineapple-headed shitstain and his weasel cum dumpster whore. How's that for a plan? The boy frowned. To Yuya show some respect. He said. You are not vital to this plan. You can very easily be replaced by any number of Oto Nin. She scowled. Off Jugo. I'll talk however I want to whoever I want. You got that? Jugo felt his temper being to act up but a spike of killing intent made both of them focus back on the leader. That's enough. Both of you. He said, now leave. I have some documents that need to be finalized. They bowed and left, to Yuya a bit slower due to her noticeable limp. He turned and stared out the window at his growing city. Just you wait Itachi. You, Konoha, and everyone else who ever disrespected the Uchiha clan will pay for your treachery. Sasuke said as his purple-ringed eyes pulsed with rage. Just what in the hell do you think you're doing? Tsunade yelled as she paced behind her desk. In front of her were teams Asuma, Kakashi, and Naruto. Team Naruto was taking most of the anger. Just because you went on a 3-year trip doesn't mean you can just go running off to other villages whenever you feel like it. And how did you even know that Suna was under attack in the first place? And who attacked it? Well, Naruto began, I knew it was under attack because Shukaku told me. Over my trip I learned how to communicate with, and access the chakra of, all the Biju. As for who attacked, those were the former Akatsuki members who left when the leaders abandoned their whole, take over the world scheme. Some of the other Biju warned me that something like this could potentially happen. I just didn't think it would be so soon. Very well, Tsunade said, already feeling another headache coming on. So who is this new group? Who are their members? What is their plan? And why would some of the Biju be aware of them? As far as I know this new group doesn't have a name. Naruto said, I can answer your other questions, but I don't like repeating myself, so could I tell you in a few days when everyone gets here? Tsunade narrowed her eyes. Naruto, what do you mean by everyone? She said slowly. Naruto nervously scratched the back of his head. I mean, I invited the leaders of Kiri, Suna, and Aim here and they'll be arriving in the next few days. Naruto took a step back at the glare Tsunade shot him. Are you insane? She cried. You can't just invite a bunch of foreign leaders to just waltz on in here. Do you have any idea what kind of message that will send other countries? They might think that we're preparing for something big. Lady Tsunade. Naruto said so sternly that her triad ended. Before it could regain steam, Naruto continued. In case it escaped your notice, one of our closest allies has a smoldering crater in the middle of their village. Put there by a gang of S-class missing nin. It seems to me that somebody is already trying to send a message. I have a lot of info that I've been ignoring because I had no proof it was true and I didn't want to cause any problems. Now because of that there are dozens of people in Suna's hospital receiving from being blown up. We need to prepare for something big because something big is already starting, and one way or another I'm going to do my best to help the people close to me. I can do it with your permission or without it. What's it going to be? Everyone watched nervously as Naruto and Tsunade stared at each other. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Tsunade sighed and pulled a bottle of sake from her desk. You are so lucky that I like you, brat. She growled. Fine. For now I'll trust your judgment. But I'm warning you. If this goes badly, you will be the one cleaning up your mess. Naruto grinned and gave Aura a thumbs up as she poured herself a drink. Now there is one thing you need to answer for. How exactly is Kagaya Otsutsuki here and why are you just letting her wander around completely unsupervised? Isn't this the same woman that nearly wiped out humanity? Naruto tilted his head in confusion. Well, her being back is part of the story I wanted to tell everyone, he said, ignoring her agitated groan. And why would I not let her wander around? She's completely harmless. As he said this, the window behind Tsunade smashed to pieces and Naruto ducked as a bone flew over his head and embedded itself in the wall. Everyone watched in confusion as Naruto walked over to the broken window and started waving. Kagaya, please don't break things, he said a little too happily. When you do, I'm the one who has to pay to fix them. Tsunade looked out the window and saw Kagaya standing on the window across the street. Her hand was extended, like she had just finished throwing something. Her fingers were twitching with annoyance, if her face was anything to go by. She turned and jumped away as Tsunade stared at Naruto. How exactly is that harmless? She asked. In case you didn't notice, people don't normally try to kill each other. Naruto shrugged. Maybe, he said. But this is a huge improvement compared to how she used to be. I placed some seals on her that would paralyze her if she tried to drain the chakra of anyone. At Suna I removed them and told her they were gone for good. But what I didn't tell her was they will reactivate as soon as she tries to do it again. In the days since the battle she hasn't tried once. I know she isn't nice or normal, but she also isn't a monster. At least not anymore. Tsunade sighed knowing she wouldn't be able to talk Naruto out of this. Of course she doubted she could do anything against Kagaya even if she wanted to. Very well. For now you're all dismissed. Everyone saluted and turned to walk away. Before you go, Naruto, how many days will it take for everyone to get here? Naruto thought for a moment before holding up 3 fingers. Tsunade was again stunned. Even ignoring Naruto's apparent ability to instantly communicate across long distances, she didn't see how they could all get here so quickly. Suna was understandably, since Naruto could have just told them before he left. If Kiri had its Jinchuriki and they could talk with their Biju like Naruto, could she suppose that he could have told them as they were leaving Suna? But she couldn't think of any way for Naruto to communicate with them, or for them to get here so quickly. She decided to stop asking questions and just let them go. As they walked down the hall, Shizune walked up to Kakashi. So Kakashi, she said as she nervously adjusted the papers she was carrying. My shift ends a little early today, so I was wondering if perhaps you would care to join me for dinner tonight. She blushed as Kakashi turned and I smiled at her. I'm very flattered, Shizune, he said while Shizune's heart fluttered. But I'm going to have to decline. Shizune's heart shattered. It was nice talking to you though. Later, Kakashi walked away, leaving Shizune disappointed until she felt someone tapping her shoulder. She saw Karen was the one trying to get her attention. Excuse me, Shizune, was it? She asked. She nodded, so Karen continued. I don't really think you're his type. Seeing Shizune's confused look, she continued. Well, we in Suna, and blushing slightly, she leaned in and whispered in Shizune's ear. A number of expressions crossed Shizune's face, most of them some variation of confusion. Finally she pulled away. Are you sure? She asked. I know that Kakashi isn't exactly the most normal person around, but that seems a bit strange even for him. Karen nodded. A person's chakra will fluctuate a certain way when they're interested in someone else, she explained. He was definitely interested. Shizune walked away looking more confused than ever. Everyone else left the Hokage Tower and began to go their own separate ways. Speaking of dates, Naruto said. Would you like to go out tonight, Sakura? Sakura stopped and thought about it. Part of her wanted to instantly reject him like she used to while she waited for Sasuke to finally come around. But another part wanted to say yes. The part that had formed when she saw Naruto bandaged in the hospital after the failure of the Sasuke retrieval mission. The part that had grown louder as she spent 3 years training and remembering her time on Team 7 and all the time she spent with Naruto while Sasuke did his best to distance himself from them as much as he could. As those two fought, the third voice that was exhausted after the mission and wanted to crawl into bed and sleep spoke up. Not right now, Naruto, she said. Ask me again some other time. Naruto smiled. That wasn't a no, so he still had a chance. All right, Sakura. Some other time, he said. Hey Ino, would you like to go out tonight? Both girls froze and stared at him. Finally Sakura spoke up. Naruto, what the hell? She asked angrily. You can't just ask out two girls right in front of each other. Do you have any idea how rude that is? At Naruto's confused look, Ino spoke up. You're making it seem like you don't care who you're dating, she said. Asking me right after Sakura makes it seem like you don't actually care what she said. But it's also like you're only interested in me because Sakura said no. Not to mention, if we both said yes, you'd be cheating on us. Naruto began waving his arms in panic. No, 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 he said. I swear I didn't mean it like that. I'm so sorry. I'm still not used to the whole dating thing. I just kind of fell into my other relationships, and none of them ever minded me seeing other people. Once again Ino and Sakura were frozen, staring at Naruto. Naruto, Sakura said slowly in a tone that promised trouble. What exactly do you mean by other relationships? Naruto, unable to sense the danger, began talking. I have 4 girlfriends, he said proudly while holding up 4 fingers. Why? Is that not normal? Sakura's eye twitched. No shit, that's not normal, she yelled. How many people do you know who run around in openly polyamorous relationships? And why are you trying to get more? Are they not enough? Naruto began flailing again. It's not like that, he said. Like I said, I just kind of fell into them. And they said I could date other people if they approved, and they're all coming, so I figured I ask you both. I've always liked Sakura, and Ino's pretty and kind, so I figured why not. Sakura was about to start another rant when she was cut off by the last thing she expected to hear. Sure, Naruto. What time should I be ready? Sakura turned and started dumbly at Ino. Ino laughed at Sakura's expression before shrugging. What? It's just a date. If it works out great, and if it doesn't we can still be friends. Plus there's no guarantee I'll meet the approval of these mystery ladies. Great. Naruto said. I'll pick you up at 6. Ino gave a wave and walked away while Naruto did the same, leaving Sakura standing there, more confused than she'd ever been. Naruto started thinking about his plans for Ino. Where should I take her? He asked himself. It needs to be somewhere fancy, but not too fancy. I don't think I can afford some of the places around here, plus it is just a first date. Save the fancy stuff for another date, if I get one. Excuse me, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto looked at who pulled him from his musings and saw the same guy who had jumped him while he was talking to Team 8. Hey, it's the creepy art guy. Naruto said with a grin. Not to be rude, but I just got through dealing with one insane artist, so could you make this quick? The artist gave a very creepy grin. My master wishes to have a word with you. Naruto's smile instantly fell and his face hardened. He fully turned to face the artist. Very well. He said coldly. Lead the way, mister. He left the question hanging, hoping to get something out of the weirdo. For the sake of this mission, you may refer to me as Sai, the now named Sai said. He then turned and walked away with Naruto close behind him. X equals. Sai led Naruto to an abandoned building where he showed him to a secret passage in the basement. What followed was a maze the Naruto couldn't even pretend to keep track of. Eventually they entered a dark room with a single illuminated table. Sitting at the table was an old man wrapped extensively in bandages, his right arm was sitting in a sling. Seeing the two enter, he made a gesture with his hand, causing Sai to stop walking. Naruto continued up to the table and sat down. So, he said as a cold smile crossed his face. You're the infamous Danzo Shimura. He looked the old man over. Considering all the horror stories I've heard about you, I'm not sure if I should be disappointed or impressed. Danzo's one eye narrowed. And how exactly have you heard about me? He asked. Or about my root agents? Naruto gave a low laugh. I don't even know where to begin. He said. I suppose the first time I saw your name was when I took down Orochimaru. Danzo's eye widened in shock. He talked a lot about you in his notes. Did you know you inspired most of the terrible things he did? Sure, he took them a lot farther than you did, but you were still the one that inspired them. And of course you still enjoyed the benefits of his work. As he said this, he stared at Danzo's injured arm. Not to mention he gave full credit for Kabuto to you. Danzo gave a grunt. Orochimaru was the one who turned Kabuto traitor. He insisted. Before that he was an ideal shinobi for Konoha. Naruto rolled his eyes. I'm sure you believe that. He said blankly. But getting back to your question. Most of what I heard about you came from my time in AIM. Danzo's eye widened again and he leaned forward in his seat. I see that got a reaction out of you. Yes, Akatsuki's descent from a band of rebels to an international terrorist cell is your fault. Not purely your fault, but you still have a lot to answer for. Unless I'm mistaken, offering aid to another village in exchange for said village helping you stage a coup is very illegal. I guess we're lucky Nagato accidentally summoned Kagaya to wipe out your forces. Indeed, Danzo said as he subtly activated the stolen Sharingan in his right eye. Why don't you tell me more about this Kagaya woman? To Danzo's confusion, Naruto shook his head. No thanks. He said. She isn't really relevant to this conversation. Instead, let's talk about what a hypocrite you are, trying to stage a coup after exterminating the Uchiha for doing the same thing. Danzo glared at Naruto. Don't look so surprised. In case you forgot, Itachi was a member of Akatsuki. If I knew the history of its leaders, learning about one of the followers shouldn't be that hard. Perhaps, Danzo said as he focused more power to his Sharingan. Of course you can understand why I'll have to ask you to never speak of this again. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Naruto said. And can you do me a favor and stop trying to use that eye on me? Laughing at the confusion and fear on Danzo's face, Naruto decided to explain. Did you know that a pair of Sharingan are permanently linked? If a Sharingan develops the ability to link to other dimensions, even if you implant those eyes in two separate people, they will still link to the same space. And since it would be bad for someone with unbreakable hypnosis to accidentally hypnotize themselves, anyone with the Kotoamatsukami can't hypnotize themselves. And if those eyes are separated, the two people with the eyes can't hypnotize each other. Naruto slowly opened his mouth as a mass of black chakra flowed out. It took the form of a one-eyed crow with a Sharingan in its single eye. The crow caught a few times before it retreated into his mouth. Where did you get that eye? Danzo asked angrily. He made a hand gesture and Naruto sensed several root agents surrounding them. Sadly for you, Itachi no longer shares your ideals. Naruto said. While he agrees that sacrifices are necessary for the greater good, he now sees that sitting back and ordering everyone else to make sacrifices for you while you brag about how great you are helps nobody. It wasn't very wise of you to tell me all of this. Danzo said as he slowly stood up, his glare never leaving Naruto. It doesn't matter. Naruto said with an actual grin. In a few days all those hornets' nests you poked are going to explode and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Now if you'll excuse me, I have other stuff to do. Naruto stood and turned to walk away but found several root agents blocking his way. You aren't going anywhere. Danzo said. You will remain here until all the problems you have created for Konoha are taken care of. I hate to break it to you, but you are not Konoha. Naruto said. You are a self-centered asshole who believes he can get away with anything by constantly spewing the phrase, greater good, even though the greatest good you've ever done has been purely for yourself. And I really can't stick around any longer. I have a date tonight. Naruto then took a deep breath as he channeled chakra to his throat. Stop him! Danzo yelled. But before they could move, the root agents were all blown away by the cloud of steam Naruto exhaled. The steam cleared, revealing Naruto was gone. Find him. Bring him back here at once. The root agents scattered, but Naruto had followed the steam to the nearest exit and was long gone. X equals. Ino looked herself over in the mirror. Naruto had left before she remembered to ask what tone the date was. She wasn't expecting anything fancy, but really hoped he had enough sense not to take her to the ramen stand. Well, he must be doing something right if he managed to win over 4 girls and got them to agree to share, she told herself as she adjusted the purple dress she had settled on. She hadn't done anything with her hair, and the only makeup she used was a bit of lipstick, enough to be without drawing attention. She figured that she looked good enough that she didn't need a ton of makeup. Well, here goes nothing, she said as she left her room and walked downstairs. At exactly 6 there was a knock on the door. Opening it, she saw Naruto in a nice black shirt and good-looking black pants. Wow, you look great, he said as he held out his arm for her to take. She closed the door and took his arm, while looking him over. Thanks, you don't look so bad yourself, she replied. She had never thought much of Naruto, but he had definitely grown to be handsome. So where are we going? Nowhere special, he said. Just the Lucky Leaf. Ino smiled. As expected, he was taking her somewhere nice without being too fancy. She wasn't sure what she'd do if he took her somewhere formal with the dress she was in. It didn't take long to reach the Lucky Leaf and get a seat. After placing their orders, Naruto decided to start the conversation. So what's it like on Team Asuma? It's okay, I guess. She sighed. I've been friends with Choji and Shikamaru since I was little, so we get along really well and it's easy for us to work together. But sometimes I get the feeling Asuma doesn't really want to be a teacher. Really? What makes you think that? Ino spent a few minutes thinking about how to phrase her answer. Finally she spoke up. Well, I always feel like Shikamaru is his friend, but Choji and I are just his students, she said. Sure, he trains us. But him and Shikamaru always hang out before and after training, plus during training they act like they're best friends. Sometimes I get the feeling he's trying to get Shikamaru to take over our training, she snorted. Good luck with that. I know how that is. Naruto said. Kakashi never played favorites, but he never really taught us anything either. If you want, you can always come train with my team. Ino smiled. Thank you, Naruto. I just might take you up on that, she said as the waiter brought their food. But let's talk about something more positive. Are you enjoying being back in Konoha? Naruto shrugged. I guess so. It's great to be home, but most of my time back has been spent being interrogated by Tsunade. The blonde pair laughed at that. And I've barely even had any time to clean my apartment. Plus I forgot to ask anyone to take care of my plants, so they all died. Now I have to start my garden all over. Ino instantly perked up. You like gardening? She asked, surprised. When Naruto nodded, she quickly latched onto the shared interest. How come I've never seen you in my family's shop? We're the best flower shop in the village. That's part of the problem, he said. When you're the best, you tend to charge a little extra. I could never afford anything from there. Hey, our shop isn't that expensive, she said with a blush. She knew that wasn't true. There were only a few flower shops in Konoha and her family's had a reputation for quality. Of course their prices were high compared to other shops. Deciding to move on, she asked Naruto what kind of plants he grow, to see if she could help get him started. They talked about their favorite flowers, ideas they had for what flowers would look nice together, and tips and tricks they had for helping plants grow. Before Ino knew it, they had been talking for several hours and Naruto was now walking home. I figured we could do it by taking some white ones, then breed them with something closely related that's blue. What do you think? Ino thought about it. I suppose in theory it could work, she said. But I'm thinking that might produce a lighter shade than what you're looking for. Plus there's no guarantee the result would be capable of producing offspring. Seeing they had reached her doorstep, she was surprised how disappointed she was that it was over. Does it have to be over? She asked. The night's still young. Sorry, but tomorrow's going to be a long day, he said. The group from Suna is going to be here tomorrow, and since I invited them here, it's only right I'm there to greet them. Ino raised an eyebrow. By group from Suna you just mean Gaara and his siblings, right? Naruto nodded. Come on. They've been here a million times. They don't need you to show them around. Unless Temari is one of these mystery ladies. Naruto laughed. Sorry, but me and Temari. Naruto wiped a tear from his eye. That's never going to happen. Though Temari is the reason I'm showing up early. I promised I'd help set her up with Shikamaru. Temari and Shikamaru? Really? Ino just couldn't see it. Shikamaru wouldn't want to bother with a relationship and Temari was way too outgoing for someone that lazy. Yeah, they'll go great together. Naruto insisted. Shikamaru just needs a few pushes in the right direction. Well, Ino, I had a great time tonight. I'll see you around. Naruto gave a wave and started walking away. Wait. Naruto looked back at Ino, who was blushing. Isn't this the part where you ask me for a kiss? Naruto grinned. Ino, you shouldn't kiss on the first date, he said. I had a great time tonight. I think we really had a connection. Maybe on the second or third date I'll ask you for that kiss. But first I'd need to get a second date with you. Realizing what he was asking, she smiled and waved. I'd love a second date. she said. But first maybe I should wait and see if these mystery ladies approve of me. But if they don't mind then sure. See you later. Ino blew Naruto a kiss and headed up to her room. Leaning out the window she smiled as Naruto walked away. This relationship was going to be far from normal, but it just might be worth it.